The timing, the launch window, and the games are becoming more clear than ever before for Nintendo Switch Pro. But will Nintendo be ready to pull the trigger? That's what it really comes down to. What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from SwitchForce. The Switch Pro has been in our mouths for many moons. As early as last summer, we thought it was coming, and then again earlier this year, we thought it was coming, and it still hasn't come, and some people believe it to be an apparition, a ghost that lingers above the heads of Switch players who wish they had a bit more hardware power. But I really think that this console is going to appear, and now based on Nintendo's latest movements, it seems like we might have our best guess yet of when this system will drop, and this is based totally on Nintendo facts and things that have already been established and what we know going forward. So let me know in the comments down below when you think this thing is dropping. We've tried to keep it out of the news cycle for a bit now, but it's inevitable that Nintendo does bring a new console. I mean, they data mine quite a bit within Switch firmware, showcasing a good idea of what kind of chipset and what kind of power and what kind of 4K this new Switch will use. Now, there's some like the Ampere analysts who believe we won't see a new Switch till 2024, but there's so much back and forth about a new Switch being Switch 2 or a new Switch being Switch Pro or both of them. Now, Furukawa said that there would be no new hardware this fiscal year. And Nintendo is known to be a little bit silly and lie outright at times, as Nintendo did before with the 3DS, and then boop, a new system appears. But if we're gonna take Furukawa at face value, that would mean no new system until the end of March 2023. Now, a few months back, there was a Splatoon 3 OLED, and now in a few months, we have a Pokemon OLED. So we know that Nintendo is trying to really ramp up the OLED usage. And that makes a lot of sense. It's their current best system. And some would say that the recent OLED announcements mean that there's no Switch Pro, and yet we have Nate Drake saying that it's coming. Earlier this year, he revealed in a tweet that what's going to happen when people say the scam releases next year in the first half of 2023. We also have the NVIDIA leak from back in March of this year, where we saw the DLSS source code indicating a new Switch system that would be able to take advantage of some of this super sampling sweetness. And beyond that, we have the Bloomberg reports that you may or may not choose to believe, but they are confident, and these are reputable journalists, hinging their reputation on the fact that developers have had 4K Switch Pro dev kits for a long time. All of this leads us to next year and the first half of next year. And what do we know about the first half of next year? Well, we now know more than ever before. We know that there's a brand new Fire Emblem in January. We know that there's a brand new Octopath Traveler 2 in February. And we know that Nintendo has decided to place Kirby Return to Dreamland Deluxe in February as well. We also know that Nintendo has chosen not to show off many titles that we expected or were rumored to appear. Things like Metroid Prime remake/remaster, things like the Zelda ports, and even Mario Kart 9 is an example of how Nintendo opted to extend the current cycle rather than move forward. Or are they rather saving games for a big shebang early next year? Now, if we're going to take Furukawa at face value, it cannot repeat the March release of the original Switch. That's when it came out back in March of 2017. It couldn't do that if the fiscal year comments are correct. Now, oftentimes companies do like to smack something right at the end of the fiscal year to release and build a lot of momentum. Would it build momentum to have a new Switch a couple of months before May 12th? And what is on May 12th? Crying! Everyone's crying because they're so excited that new Zelda is finally here. And oh, by the way, it is Tears of the Kingdom, as Nintendo confirmed to Eurogamer today. That's what it's called. Not Tears, but Tears. May 12th. If you drop at the end of March, is that too much of a gap? Nintendo loves to launch with Zelda. We've seen that happen plenty of times previously, including with the Switch itself and with the game directly preceding Tears of the Kingdom. May 12th would be an interesting launch date for Nintendo because it would be a smack dab in the middle of the year hardware release. Typically, Nintendo and most other companies use the end of the year, the fall, the hype cycle for the Christmas and holiday shopping season. Nintendo also used March, but May would be a totally different ball game. Now, if this is an iterative expansion, they can kind of do whatever they want. And based on Nintendo's success, they really can do whatever they want, and what better way than to launch with a brand new Zelda? And perhaps the reason that Metroid Prime was not shown off is because it's being saved to really show off the power of the new Switch. And maybe Pikmin 4 is also being saved to show off the power of this new Switch. Miyamoto was very clear that there's no gameplay to show today, and why would they do that? One can make the argument that they're building a library of games that are going to look superb with the uptick in hardware capabilities, and that they'll have a showcase early next year to reveal this hardware and show Pikmin 4, Metroid Prime Remake, and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom on this new thing. That doesn't mean that they can't release Metroid Prime before it comes out. In fact, they could drop the remake in March, but to give an indication of a really sizzly first-person game that can showcase how the Switch Pro differs from the Switch might be enough to just make people make the jump. And then you have the case of Tears of the Kingdom being the tentpole title for the Switch Pro. It's the perfect launch game and could once again start a domino effect like we saw in 2017, where we have a brand new Zelda with a new Switch, and that leads to a holiday with a new Mario game. Now, I firmly believe, like I would bet you $1 million, you can play Tears of the Kingdom on your current Switch, even if they release a new one. Even if it was the Switch 2, which I don't think it will be, I think it'll be marketed as a Switch Pro, you will be able to play Zelda on your current system. Nintendo will ensure that there is no necessity to upgrade, but that there are a lot of perks for making that possible. And you could begin to wonder if Nintendo's strange Switch Online expansion omission is also being saved for this new launch. Why didn't they show off Game Boy or Game Boy Advance when we know that emulator is in the works? Where was it? What could it be being saved for? Because September is the time that they love to re-up people's subscriptions and really bring value to Switch Online. There's a lot of wild cards here, and a bunch of this is just speculation, but the facts show that Nintendo will have something in the future, something new. Remember, they also were investing a ton in research and development. They were acquiring a bunch of parts, and we have an earlier interview from this year in February where Nintendo seemed to indicate in an investor Q&A that their next system would be backwards compatible. That leads me to believe that they are really prepping the waters for what comes next, and that leads me to believe that it's going to coincide with the big game that started the Switch off on a stellar, heat-seeking missile path straight to the top of the charts. And it lines up perfectly, because if not for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, what for? Metroid Prime 4, Mario Kart 9, I suppose, but we know now that they're not making Mario Kart 9 for a long while. In fact, the Mario Kart 8 Course Booster Pack is going to last us until towards the end of 2023. So if you're going to say that they're waiting to launch with Mario Kart, I don't think so. I think that's too far gone. And if this last Direct showed us anything, it's that a lot of the games aren't looking so hot these days. They haven't been looking so hot for many days, and graphics aren't everything, but I do feel like the pinch, the squeeze, is becoming stronger and tighter than before. I feel like the need and the necessity, not just from gamers, but it must be from developers and publishers as well. There must be a push from that side of the equation saying, dude, Nintendo, the gap is too large, your systems are difficult, what are we supposed to do with these new games that you want us to port over? And it's really grueling to try and grind this game down so that it can work on underpowered hardware that frankly was underpowered even when it launched 6 years ago. So could May be the time where we finally put the Switch Pro, not to bed, but to birth, that this thing finally drops? And if that is to be the case, I do firmly believe Nintendo will have a separate showcase. Whether you want to call it the Pro, the Drake, the Super, the Switch 2, it would make a lot of sense for Nintendo to utilize a February timeframe, a March timeframe to prep the waters for this system. In fact, even January could be an option, given that Nintendo did showcase the Switch multiple months before it was ready to launch. There was the initial trailer with the rooftops and the fun, and then there was the big January event that led into a March launch. So could they do a January reveal, a March event, and then a May release? It's very possible. And maybe some of the stranger slowdowns that we've seen as of late are, yeah, probably because of the pandemic still, but maybe also kind of ramping things down and getting ready to rev them back up, not for a brand new console, but for a big push for a more expensive, higher end console, and to try and convert so many of their 110 million players over to a new box with exciting games that, yes, can be played so they don't screw you over, so that they seem very consumer friendly, but that showcase potential for what a 4K Nintendo developed first party title can do. And what better way than a game like Metroid Prime Remake, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and Pikmin 4. Where there's smoke, there's usually fire, and there has been a year and a half of smoke around this supposed Switch Pro. And by the time we reach Tears of the Kingdom, it will be 2 years of Switch Pro murmurs and whispers, and I really hope that they deliver. Eventually they will. Nintendo will come out with a new system. That is indisputable. It's just when and in what way, but it does look like that first half of 2023, tied around Zelda, reveal early in the year, maybe bringing some of these games that are oddly missing from their recent Direct, that could be the solution to all of our quandaries and all of our concerns over when Nintendo will decide to up the ante on the hardware side of things. Let me know what you think. Do you believe that this is coming in May? I know most of you will say you're not going to believe it until you see it for yourself with your own eyes, but it is good to prep ourselves. It is good to get ready, and Nintendo has laid more breadcrumbs as of late. So I'm very curious what you think. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, SwitchForce out.